What is up? Welcome to episode 1 of the Triple Cross podcast, where we argue about sports. We all the sports arguments that you're having at your bar, at your barbecue, with your friends. We give you all your points so you can beat them. I am John. I am here with my co-hosts Casey and Quentin, aka Q. Boys, how you doing? You ready to argue some sports today?
When are we not ready to argue sports?
Ready to argue some NFL? We're gonna do some
ready
NFL.
to talk
We're pretty close.
Yeah, let's get it.
We're pretty close. We're like 10 days out now. How we looking, Casey? Resident NFL expert.
Well, I mean, I don't know. Q knows a good amount about the NFL too. John, you're gonna be.
I've heard of it.
You're gonna participate in the debates today.
Yes.
We're gonna see how it goes. I think this is gonna be a fun year in the NFL. Every year is a good one, and it's always fun to see, especially like people who move around, how this affects them. I don't know if we'll be talking about anybody who
how things are going to go for Tyreek,
I think
we're going to go for Jameis.
Yeah, we played it a little safe this episode. I don't know that we'll have any of those big movers, but we'll definitely get to those guys as we do more episodes.
For sure. Major news. Anything you want to talk about here? I mean, Tom Brady comes back, leaves training camp for like 2 weeks, right? We got Aaron Donald dual wielding Bengals helmets. What's going on? It's kind of a weird preseason. Aren't we isn't it supposed to be all the third strings? Why are we?
Yeah, I think that's why somebody like Tom Brady feels like he can take off for 2 weeks. There were rumors he was out filming The Masked Singer. Did you guys hear that?
There's speculation that he's on The Masked Singer.
Speculation.
Yes.
We'll see. What do you think, Q? You think AD is going to get suspended for the helmet thing?
Nah, I don't think so. That's just typical stuff, but I just want to know why.
I don't think it's typical.
The Rams and Cincinnati are even practicing together.
I think he's a bit of a
after just taking a tough loss in the Super Bowl.
I know. You can't. I don't think the league sets those up anyway. So it was the team.
Definitely not. But what were they expecting?
I know, but I feel like that's the take people have when they're trying to defend AD.
Yeah.
You're like, why are they practicing together? I'm like, okay, regardless of who you're practicing against, why are you hitting them with helmets?
Yeah.
If they hit him with the suspension, I will be very surprised. Very.
I might be surprised too, but I think they should.
And I guess maybe I'm just not up on it, but I thought you take someone's helmet and use it as a weapon, that's pretty bad.
I don't think he was using it as a weapon necessarily.
He just had him.
Not using it as a weapon. Are you kidding me?
Did you? I've only seen the memes, but this dude was over here, he was pulling. He was like, "You shall not pass."
Yeah, no, man. They were weaponified for sure. But I think the NFL and the sports media together are obviously AD makes them a ton of money because he's just one of the biggest names in the sport. I think nobody wants him to be off the field, really. I think they're kind of hiding behind that, the NFL can't even do anything if they wanted to because it was during practice and the teams regulate punishments during practice. Yeah. But I think that's BS because, we don't need to get into Deshaun Watson, but none of his stuff happened on the field. His stuff happened even outside of the practice facility. If the NFL player the conduct policy, it always is in effect. So I don't care if it's the practice or not.
Let me put it this way. If you're wearing your uniforms, I think the NFL is far more likely to get involved.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just because the media, the physical media, the video, it looks like a game then. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but we all know there's a handful of guys.
We know, but the average Joe public person doesn't know that it wasn't a game.
Well, it was training camp, but we know there's a protected class. The top 10 most famous players in the league are not going to get. Think about all the stuff you've seen Brady connected to. And does Brady get more than a slap on the wrist? No. He's the same way. AD is the Brady of the
defense. Footballs. You can spy.
Listen, I'm almost 95% sure that Aaron Donald is not going to get suspended.
The argument isn't will he? It's should he? Because he won't. I agree.
He's definitely not, and he definitely shouldn't because think about it. It's football. Things are physical. You know how many things happen behind the scenes?
Why did Myles Garrett get suspended then?
That's my point. And maybe because it was a quarterback?
What people say, mostly Twitter and stuff, I say it's because that was during a televised game. And I say that part matters none because we all saw the clip. It went viral, so it might as well.
We also haven't seen a clip of what exactly happened in the Bengals versus Rams training camp.
You haven't seen the clip, Q?
Is there
Yeah.
an actual clip of
Oh
him?
yeah,
Yeah.
there is a clip. I mean, we don't have it ready to pull up.
We don't have it ready. Man, we didn't know Q hadn't seen it. Like that would have been something
I
Bro,
only
awesome.
he
saw
literally is in the. It's a big old like scrum, and he's got both of his helmets, and he's whirlwinding 2 helmets around and smashing people with them. Like,
We'll put it this way: his helmet weapon it's not good. He's clearly not trained in the usage of helmet as weapons, but he's big and strong. So
I will say you
yeah.
can't see like the exact impact like you can see with Garrett versus who did he hit? Rudolph? Mason Rudolph. Yeah, he hit him in that. You could see that kind of connect and stuff like that's scary. Yeah, I get that. But like this is clearly like more violent, I think is pretty like he swung multiple times at basically anybody around, which is a ton of people. And he had 2 helmets, so there were at least 2 people helmetless when it happened. I will say this just because I'm a little biased. I'm a Niners fan, so I'm not just talking crap about the Rams. I will say I know the Bengals. Lyle Collins started it, but he doesn't even like beef with the Super Bowl thing because he wasn't on the Bengals last year. He started it. He deserves to get suspended too. I think 2 games for him, 4 games for Donald. Let's move on. That would be what I do, but I don't think anybody's getting suspended though.
I don't think so either. And the question of should he, I'm a big fan of consistency of policy. So established policy here is if you take someone's helmet off and start to use it as a weapon, then you get suspended. There's a few circumstantial differences. 1, it was technically training camp. 2, he did not use. So the other thing Myles Garrett did is he specifically took the helmet and then used it as a weapon on the person whose helmet it was, who was now helmetless. He was not specifically targeting it, anyone who is helmetless. But yeah, I mean, those are such nuances that I think consistency of policy would be preferable for me. Maybe a lighter sentence. I'm fine with a lighter sentence because of those circumstances.
Does it really make you feel better that Does it really make you feel better that Donald didn't even really know who he was swinging at though? Like he was swinging so wildly.
Yeah. Like yeah, that's maybe worse. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean it's more
worse is specifically swinging the helmet at the person who's now helmetless. That's like outright like, oh, you could kill them.
Yeah. So I actually just watched the clip, and yeah, I mean it looks incriminating, but
you got it. Should we pull it up? Should we share it? Pull it up here. Sure. For anyone who's watching this and hasn't seen it, hasn't paused our video to go watch it.
Yeah. Let's pull it up so that people don't have to navigate.
Yeah, bring it. Yeah, add your screen here, or send it to me.
Episode 1 of a podcast, guys. We don't have these things loaded up, but we're gonna get there. We're gonna
put it in the chat.
You put it in the chat. All right, cool.
All right, John.
I will pull her up.
John's gonna be our de facto host here, at least in episode 1. But we'll see how it goes. I like it. John's probably the most like presentable out of us. We're a couple of hooligans, Q.
Couple hooligans.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this, Q. After watching the clip, your tone changed a little bit.
Nah, I still don't think he's gonna get suspended. I mean,
hey, you're changing the argument on me again. I don't think he's going to, but does he deserve to?
I don't think he deserves to. I feel like this type of stuff happens in practices and training camps all the time. Not people getting smashed in the head with the helmet, but like.
Okay, well, here's the question. He's holding 2 helmets. So, like, do you think he took helmets off of 2 other Bengals players? No, he took them off the dude who was trying to hit with the helmets originally. Like, he didn't just walk up to 2 other random Bengals players. Like, I'm sure it's Lyle Collins' helmet is one of them, and probably the next dude who got in the way. Like, so, like, I just don't think that argument holds water. I don't think he'll get suspended, like we said. We all agree on that. But I think he should be. I do think, like John said, it's not consistent. Myles Garrett, also a young, promising, like defensive player. He had never had a strike or anything against him, and he got suspended indefinitely, which became the rest of the season. Even if the Browns made the playoffs that year, I think he wasn't going to be able to play. So this happening so early, yeah, maybe you don't say for the whole season, but I don't like that it's nothing. And I think the NFL has all the power they need to step in. I don't respect the argument that like they can't do anything because it's up to the team. I think that's just completely hiding behind it. But I get people want to protect AD. He's the most recognizable defensive player in the game right now.
If I'm fair about this, do I think he deserves a suspension? No. But I am biased. I will admit I am a Rams fan. So I don't think, should they fine him? 100,000%.
I believe he's getting fined anyway. I think that will happen.
No, I mean, I think it's fair to fine him. Fine him how much ever you want to fine him, but don't suspend him.
So wait, just for consistency's sake here? Then did you think that Myles Garrett should get suspended when he did it? Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
I think
I can hop in here for you, Q. I think that one of the reasons the Myles Garrett thing was so cut and dry to everybody is because it was like when you watched it, it was a little gut wrenching. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is a little less gut wrenching, but here, I just want to look at these strikes right here.
Yeah.
Oh, if somebody was helmetless on that one,
he's dead.
Like, that's a connection that he's dead, right? So to me, I'm like, that's just as dangerous what he's doing.
Yeah, I think honestly, it's just that was prime time, by the way, when that happened. So yes, the whole like national media saw it, but I think I don't care how many people saw it. I think the reason this doesn't seem as bad to a lot of people is because we don't have like the great camera angles. If you see the impact that first thing made, that first helmet swing made,
yeah,
and it was like high def, zoomed in, like how it was on, I think it was Thursday Night Football, if I'm not mistaken, with Garrett. I think even Q would be like, oh man, yeah. Did you see his head go?
It does not look good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I will say this. I am impressed with the fact that he got 2 helmets. Like, I mean, that's just impressive.
I don't know. I mean, I respect
like,
he as a player.
He was like, hey, there's a fight going on. And he was able to acquire 2 helmets from the other team, right? Like, he's like, he didn't like take one of his own help. Like, he wasn't like, yeah, I'm going to weaponize this. He was like, yeah, I'll get yours and yours. And now we're going. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm like, that's impressive. Not
I
good.
also think
it's not good, but it is
a huge
impressive.
difference. There's a huge difference between the Myles Garrett situation and this AD situation. Myles Garrett situation was obviously in the middle of a game, and on top of that, he hit someone in the head, like who didn't have a helmet on. AD was swinging his helmet around, but we also don't know if any of those connected. And we also don't know if any of those connected to someone who didn't have a helmet on. So
is attempted battery.
The result doesn't change what they're aiming at, though.
Yeah,
the result does not change what they're.
If somebody tries to kill you but they fail, do we just not charge them? No, that's attempted.
Well, you get
murder.
A lesser charge for sure. So fine. I'm fine.
But it was more of a scuffle though, whereas like Myles Garrett was like 1-on-1, like literally that was like a fight between 2 people and Myles Garrett trying to actually physically put him down.
So when you play football, and so I can kind of get this, I'll get a little behind you here, but I still disagree. When you play football, when a fight breaks out, usually you're trying to remove helmets, not so you can use them, but so you can actually hit, like so that you can actually punch somebody, right? So like it could be that there was like, I don't know, there's things happened and then there were 2 helmets in my hand, but I'm like, I mean, one helmet, then I would say like that could have just happened. Like you didn't just happen upon 2 helmets. No one else had any. Like that was on purpose. He got 2 helmets on purpose, and it wasn't like his intent was essentially the same. As
I'll go the other side a little bit real quick here, just because like, yeah, training camp fights do happen. So I'm not mad that it started. I do think using the helmets, that is not normal in these training camp fights. No. So I think it should be punished. No. But I will say this. Aaron Donald is a beast. If I had to bet on any player in football obtaining 2 helmets from the opposing team during a live scrimmage, like it would be AD. He's the best bet for that. Like,
yeah, he is. Yeah. I mean, if we were having that debate today, I think hands down.
I do think though, you got to set a precedent. You already have really in a game. And like, what does it just signal? Like, can you do this in a game? Like, you know, that none of us disagree. If it would have happened in a game, he would get punished. So like, really, what is the difference? Like, it's not a regular fight, but I don't think we're convincing anybody here. So.
Yeah, nobody's moving their argument. Nobody's.
If you're a Rams fan, you say no, he's fine.
No,
if you're not,
it's all good.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like for me, the biggest thing is like training camp versus real game. Like, so much shit happens in training camp that we probably don't hear about, but at the same time, it's like obviously the intent is still there, but the situation's completely different. Like absolutely different. But yeah, like I don't know, it's just that's like the biggest thing for me, honestly. It's training camp versus real game, like suspend them 100% out of line. Training camp, like so much shit goes down. It's like, you know.
Yeah, I mean, you know, end of the day, we're not going to be able to control. NFL is going to do what they're going to do. We can give our opinion, but you know, it's up to the league, and I think we all kind of agree on what the league's going to do. Probably little to none. Moving on to the actual debates we're having. That wasn't even a planned debate. Me and Casey just decided to team up and tell Q wrong about the Rams. Moving on to the actual debates we are having today. We've got some good ones. We've got some ones that are really pertinent right now coming into the NFL season. A lot of people are probably having their fantasy drafts like this weekend, next weekend. Maybe you've already had it, but a lot of fantasy drafts going down. So what we are hitting some major debates today. We are hitting who is going to lead the NFL in total passing yards in the 2022-2023 season, who is going to lead the NFL in total rushing yards, and who is going to lead the NFL in total receiving yards. We hit Twitter beforehand. We're going to lead off with passing. Going to start with the QBs. We hit Twitter up beforehand. Have some Twitter streams here. So we split it up into NFC and AFC on Twitter. Leading the NFC, Tom Brady, and some pretty serious challengers here in the NFC, but I want to just call out that by winning 28% of the NFC vote, I mean, this was way more votes. People are far more concerned with who is going to lead the NFC in passing yards than they are who's going to lead the AFC in passing yards. Only 131 votes here, and Josh Allen ran away with it. Anything you guys have to say here? I'm not surprised by the Tom Brady pick. I am a little surprised Aaron Rodgers is so high, considering he's never led even the NFC in passing yards. But, people are going to be people. They know who he is. I'm a little surprised by the Josh Allen. How about you guys?
See, okay.
Should we get into it here? Should we let Casey lead off?
Okay. I mean, Casey wants to lead that one. I got some stuff.
We're still figuring this out. But, I mean, Let's go ahead, and we've posed the question here: who will have the most passing yards in 2022? I say let's get into the argument.
We're not debating the NFC and AFC. The one QB to rule them all.
Right. We didn't. Well, I guess we did show the AFC poll too. So yeah, let's get into our arguments. We've each picked one guy to kind of represent. It's not necessarily our only pick. It's the guy we're representing on today's show. We're gonna try to earn some points from the other guys in our arguments, and then I think afterwards we can kind of clean it up. Who did we not talk about? Touch on them briefly, because there's a lot of great quarterbacks in the NFL.
For sure. So we're each going to score each other. We're not allowed to agree during the debate. We are supposed to argue with each other, but we will score each other on our arguments afterwards on a scale of 1 to 10. And we got to be honest. If we just try and throttle everything, there will be a winner at the end of the day. But we got to be honest. If we just try and throttle each other's points, then it'll come back around. So Casey, lead us off with quarterbacks. Who do you think will lead the NFL in total passing yards this year?
All right, my pick this year, guys, for who will have the most passing yards in 2022 is Thomas Brady. Tom Brady is the GOAT of all time. I think at this point, that's pretty uncontested. Even me, a Niners fan, I want to look back on like Joe Montana, call him the greatest of all time. I think at a point in time, he was the greatest quarterback of all time. Even like Jerry Rice across like all positions. Like I want to call those guys the greatest. Tom Brady just pours salt on all those arguments. Tom Brady is the uncontested greatest of all time, in my opinion. But this is the oldest version of Tom Brady we've ever seen. Is he washed up? People thought that in his last year at New England. They thought the next place he goes, he's not going to do well. But here he is. He's reinvigorated a whole team that honestly wasn't that good before he got there. He's attracted superstars across the league to come and join him, pulls Gronk out of retirement. Seems like every year. I know he hasn't come out of retirement yet this year. He might not, but who knows? He might. When they're going on a playoff run and like Cameron Braid at tight end goes down or something, let's just say, I think Gronk is getting a phone call. He's getting in football shape just in case. Tom Brady also last year absolutely dominated in this category. This is kind of a chalky pick, if I'm being honest. Tom Brady threw for the most passing yards because Tom Brady threw way more passes than anybody else, had more completions. That's what they're going to do in Tampa Bay. They are not going to run the ball very much at all. They're going to pass on every down. If they score a lot, if they move down the field, it will be because of Brady. Brady is going to dominate again, just like he did last year in this category. Guys, I took the easy one here. It's a slam dunk pick, in my opinion. Great receiving core. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, maybe not there at the beginning of the season, but a great 1-2 punch there. You add in guys like Russell Gage, who they went out and got as like a priority free agent, who's a younger guy who should be good. And Julio Jones, 4th on the depth chart at wide receiver, one of the greatest receivers of all time, certainly in his generation, maybe the greatest receiver. A couple good tight ends, always a possibility of Gronk. Still a good O-line, even with Jensen going down at center. Guys, teams are going to have to score a lot of points to try to win against them, so they're going to have to keep passing. Even when they get ahead, they never stop passing last year. We're going to see more of the same. Tom Brady is the slam dunk #1 in passing yards. That's my take.
I mean, you did get to take the easiest the easiest argument, probably the most likely argument. So my thinking here is really you have to beat all comers, right? So when I'm looking at Brady versus someone like like a Kirk Cousins. I don't think Kirk Cousins will lead the NFL, but Kirk Cousins, who has a total offense around him, like that man will be on the field for a lot of minutes, right? Because he's going to move the chains. They're going to stay on the field. They have just all the weapons, right? Like they have Adam Thielen. They've got good running backs. Like they have a good offensive line. They will stay on the field. Whereas Tampa Bay is just going to pass. It's going to pass. Like Tom Brady, he's going to have more 3 and outs, in my opinion, right? So, yeah, he will throw the most passes. Yeah, the most attempts probably does make you the most likely to win the total passing yards crown. See Jameis Winston. But yeah, I mean, I do think that some guys who have more of a total offense may get, and especially, when they throw a lot of screen passes, West Coast offense style passes where there's yak yards involved, right? Like, I think that there's some guys who have a shot. Q, what do you think?
Honestly, I gotta say, Tom Brady, of course, I gotta agree with Casey in this one aspect that he is the GOAT. But when it comes down to it, I think there's just other guys in the league right now. Herbert, Stafford, Mahomes, that could really show up. And especially, that number 2, the one that got second place against Tom Brady, which was what was it Aaron Rodgers, right?
Last year?
Yeah. Or no.
We don't have that ready. If you're gonna come with that argument, you gotta have
no. In the Twitter poll.
Right. Yeah. Okay. In the Twitter poll, going back to that. So
just to be clear, somebody also voted for Josh Allen to win the NFC.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
So
I'm not putting too much talk.
We're not saying Twitter knows. We're just saying, yeah, Aaron Rodgers was second to Brady at 27.4.
This tells me everything I need to know about Twitter polls because, what? Aaron Rodgers over Stafford.
A good quarterback. We're not saying Aaron Rodgers isn't.
He's a good quarterback, but look at the question that it's asking. It says, "Who will lead the NFC in passing yards this season?" Aaron Rodgers is not going to even come close to leading the NFC this season. Definitely not over Stafford. And then he also doesn't even have Devontae. Like, no way. There's no way. That's not even possible.
I mean, hey, Q, almost 3,000, almost 2,200 people. Can't be wrong, right?
Oh, all of them are wrong. All of
the biggest confirmation bias
of that population are absolutely incorrect because there's no way without Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers even comes close. Not a chance.
Interesting stat, just really quick. I'll defend A-Rod during my Brady take, honestly, because fantasy purposes, which is basically the counting stats, it's how many passing yards, passing touchdowns and stuff. Weirdly enough, maybe just last year, Aaron Rodgers did perform at a higher level, fantasy stats-wise, without Devontae Adams on the field, which is the craziest sounding thing, I know. But I think what it does to defenses is it opens it up. They don't know where the ball is going as readily. And those offenses that do pass the ball around a little bit more, they tend to be a little bit more prolific passing attack. And just to rebut some of these claims, the Bucs have arguably the most talented position groups, skill position groups in football. You bring up other receiving corps. I don't know that the Bucs aren't the best, honestly. And as far as a complete offense, sure, the Bucs aren't going to run the ball as much, but it's not that they can't. It's just that they choose not to. This is an argument about who's going to pass the most, get the most passing yards. You got to pass the ball to get passing yards. The running back is a good running back. Leonard Fournette on the Tampa Bay Bucs. He's going to get a ton of screen passes, probably lead the league in them, honestly. Dalvin Cook might be a more talented runner of the football on Minnesota, like you said, John. But in the screen game, I don't care if Dalvin Cook ekes out 2 more yards on a screen pass than Lenny is. Lenny is going to get just as many. That's essentially how they run the football in Tampa, is they shovel pass it off, screen pass it off to Leonard Fournette, and he does his thing. So Tom Brady on the field, barring injury, this one's
Casey's got.
My only argument to that, honestly, is this is going to come down to the talent around Tom Brady. So Mike Evans has to stay healthy, and this applies to any quarterback in the league, honestly. Mike Evans has to stay healthy. And I don't know if Chris Godwin is the healthiest right now.
Julio Jones,
because
arguably the most talented receiver out of his prime, sure. arguably the most
Out of
talented
this
receiver in the NFL, is 4th on their depth chart. And they also have a pass-catching running back and a couple pass-catching tight ends.
The argument applies, the injury argument applies to anybody, but I think that, it's not really that fair to bring it up unless we're talking about players with a history of injury problems, right?
Yeah,
that's
actually a point in my column. Tom Brady missed the majority of that one season, one time out of over 20. He's been 23 years.
Yeah, according to Twitter, the only other challenger here probably would be Josh Allen, who ran away with the FCA poll, which is a little surprising to me. I do like, if I'm going to make an argument against Brady, I do like Allen's progression. I mean, the progression that we've seen out of this kid is really incredible. And he's young still. I think he's getting better and better. And I think he'll get better this year as well. I think he could outpass Brady, also a team that's going to do a lot of passing. But yeah, look, you took the easy argument, and you will be scored as such.
I love Josh Allen. In my own league that I commission, he's my keeper. Josh Allen is exciting. He's fun to watch. He's not going to beat Tom Brady in passing yards. He's going to beat Tom Brady in rushing yards for sure. He's going to run for about 700 rushing yards. He's going to get about 7 touchdowns on the ground. They're going to throw a lot. He's got good receivers, but man, nobody's going to beat the GOAT.
All right, moving on. Q, who do you have to lead the league in passing yards this season?
So I have Matthew Stafford at the number 1 spot for the 2022 season. And, I think personally, like I said, I am a Rams fan, so there's a little bit of bias there. But with that being said, I think easily Matthew Stafford is one of the most efficient quarterbacks that we have right now in the league. Aside from Joe Burrow, I think Joe Burrow is only more, or last year specifically, Joe Burrow was a little bit more efficient than Matthew Stafford. But I think Matthew Stafford is the second place for yards per attempt. So obviously he's working with one of the best wide receivers in the league, Cooper Kupp, arguably. If he's healthy and ready to repeat the success that they had last year, I think they could go very, very far. And I feel the only way Stafford doesn't get number 1, obviously, is if Cooper gets injured, because they don't have that much talent around Stafford in terms of depth for their wide receivers in general. Cooper's really just taking on the load there. But I know this argument's kind of based upon, what Cooper, or just Cooper in general. But it really is everything. So those two together, I feel, is just absolutely amazing. So yeah, really dependent on Cooper for sure. The only thing that worries me there is Sean McVay is obviously the head coach, but the Rams just got rid of their old offensive coordinator, Kevin O'Connell, and now they're working with Liam Cohen, who is, I don't know if he's head coach or just offensive coordinator of University of Kentucky. But I'm assuming, with this new offensive coordinator, they'll probably allow Stafford to kind of take control with play calling. But yeah, we'll see on that. So yeah, I guess we'll just see how this season goes.
All right, Q. I'm going to be nice to you here real quick, because obviously you're biased. You went with your own team's quarterback. It's a ballsy move on episode 1 of a new podcast. But I got, for my my segment here on Torching Ya, I got a couple questions for you. Just yes or no questions. 1, do you know how many Triple Crown winners, for those who don't know, it's people who lead the NFL in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns. Do you know how often that's happened since the year 2000?
You are loading this question with since.
No, I'm just asking. It's just a yes or no question.
Since the year 2000, you're loading it. I know where you're going.
How many?
Go ahead.
How many?
It's been 2.
Okay.
Steve Smith Sr. did it in 2005, long time ago, even on its own, right? By the way, before that, it was 1992. So it's not like I'm really cherry picking. This happened a lot in the 60s.
Yeah.
So it's only happened 4 times, by the way,
all the time.
It's only happened 4 times since any of us were born, by the way. Right? And only twice since Q was born. To be fair. So I think it's a relevant question. I'm not cherry picking. All right, but Cooper Kupp did it last year. Incredible season. Absolutely. Now, that being the case, that being that crazy level of a breakout for Cooper Kupp, what are the odds he can do it again? Do you think Cooper Kupp is having a better season than last year?
Very possible. Very
very possible. He has
very
essentially
possible.
two of the best seasons we've ever seen in the NFL out of one receiver in back-to-back seasons. Okay, I mean, at least you're being fair. I'm going to go ahead and say he's not. Also,
Okay,
I
but
find it
why
interesting you didn't make this. This is my section here. I find it interesting you didn't touch on anybody else he's going to throw the ball to in your argument, because who are they missing from last year? OBJ. Sure, they got A-Rob. Let me ask you this. Yes or no question. Who's a better receiver, Odell Beckham or Allen Robinson? I think we all know the answer to that one.
Is that?
I mean, Odell, right?
Yeah.
So I'm saying, without being too harsh on you, I'm saying Cooper Kupp cannot repeat the season he just had. I think he's going to have a great season. He's, fantasy football wise, he's a round one pick. Obviously, he's a great receiver. He might be the wide receiver one out of all receivers in football. Who knows? But I don't think he repeats this last year. And I don't think A-Rob replaces the production and the game planning and all the things teams will have to do to account for an OBJ. I don't think he do it. Plus, just to float it out there in the last second of my little thing here, Stafford has an elbow injury. Maybe you don't think a big deal out of it, but it's not helping. Certainly not going to help. So and he didn't do it last year, by the way. That was the whole premise of the argument. If he didn't do it last year with Cooper Kupp winning the Triple Crown with OBJ on his team, how is he ever going to do it this year?
So here, I mean, Q chose a more difficult argument for sure. And in our scoring, there's definitely, we're considering difficulty of argument. I'm going to take an even more difficult position. I mean, the easy position to take here is someone like Josh Allen, right? Or Pat Mahomes. It's like, dude, the guy's just the GOAT, right? Like, he's just really good. But like, or he's going to be the GOAT. But like, I mean, so you took a more difficult argument, which I, I'm here for it. Here's me tearing it down and actually really just extending kind of on Casey's teardown. Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp were able to take a lot of people by surprise last year, in my opinion. Like Casey said, I mean, Cooper Kupp had a breakout year, and that's an understatement. A breakout year is an understatement. Matt Stafford had a breakout year, and that's an understatement. Now, I could see the argument that, like, no, Stafford's always been that good. He's actually even better than that. I don't care if he doesn't have OBJ. I think he makes receivers better. But it just seems unlike. I think a lot more defenses are going to be a lot more ready for Cooper Kupp and Matt Stafford this year. And so I just don't see it, right? Like, it's probably not going to happen. But is your argument good for it? Yeah, I mean, you make a case, right? Like, he definitely is on the come up. But yeah, that's my teardown.
Okay, I respect you taking a hometown hero too, being a little bit of a homer for the sake of
Rams. That's bold, right? Like, I'm not taking Kirk Cousins. Vikings are my favorite team, and I'm like, I mean, he's okay.
Injuries aside, let's say everyone's healthy. Everyone's healthy, right? Arguably, right now, Cooper Kupp is the best wide receiver in the league, right? With that being said, and we're talking about in terms of skill, I think he's always gonna outperform regardless. And the chemistry that him and Matthew Stafford have together, I just think they inevitably just do great things regardless of any other factor. Regardless of the fact that Cooper Kupp almost just set the all-time receiving, yards last year, regardless of that fact at all, who's to say that he can't have two back-to-back great seasons if everyone stays healthy? I mean, and I know this argument isn't even about Cooper Kupp. This is about Matthew Stafford. But I mean, Matthew Stafford's a great quarterback, and regardless of the talent that he has around, who's to say any of these other wide receivers can't have a breakout season?
Yeah, no, I think I respect you for taking your team's quarterback, but I think that would have been a stronger way to make your argument in the beginning. You really relied on Cooper Kupp a lot. I think he got juiced up about as much as he could last year. And I honestly don't believe in a breakout from the other guys. I think Van Jefferson's down too, right? Isn't he not? I think he's got something that's a little hit on their depth chart. I don't know if he's missing the whole season.
What you're talking about is a combination. Like, okay, so I'm gonna cite a couple combinations that are like, hey, defenses knew they were coming and there weren't a lot of other weapons and it didn't matter. Tom Brady and Randy Moss, right? It's like, yeah, it doesn't matter. You know, it's coming. They're going to just do their thing. Peyton in his prime and Reggie Wayne. Like, that's the kind of combination you're talking about. You think Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp is. If you're right, then you're probably right. He probably will lead in passing yards. I just don't. Yeah, I mean, I think the likelihood you're right is low.
There are a lot of superstar receivers in the NFL, and from like a fantasy perspective, they hardly ever repeat as the number 1 2 years in a row. Just the way it happens.
We'll give Q final word on this, and then we'll move on to my pick.
Yeah, so I mean, all I'm saying is that, yes, it heavily depends on Cooper Kupp, which obviously, like, without Cooper Kupp, I wouldn't even consider Matthew Stafford. Cooper Kupp is healthy, for one. For two, and if we just look at the difference between Cooper Kupp's stats in 2020 versus 2021, granted, you know, obviously Matthew Stafford wasn't there, but just like the glow up is like seriously real. Like, he did exponentially better than he did when Matthew Stafford came. So I think right now they have no bad, huh?
I think you meant that reverse way you said it.
Yep.
Well, yeah, he's doing better with Matthew Stafford in 2021 than he did in 2020 with Jared Goff. So all I'm saying is, yeah, who's to say that 2022 can't be another good season as long as they're both healthy and any other wide receiver has a breakout season or just does well. I mean, I can't put it past Matthew Stafford because he's such a good quarterback. I feel as a leader of that team, he can, in hopes, make the other players better. So, yeah, we'll see.
All right. I mean, look, if your team wins the Super Bowl, then, you know, I think you're okay to be optimistic. It's okay to be optimistic about your team winning.
I mean, yeah,
and
so nowhere to go but down.
That's the best. That's the best argument that I have.
When your team wins the Super Bowl, you can be optimistic, and I respect it. But I don't have to agree with it. All right, so moving on to who I think will lead the league in passing yards this year. I'm taking someone who I know is an outside shot. I'm well aware of the arguments against them, but you know, I'm going to try and make some points on a creative argument here. I am going to take a one, Mr. Russell Wilson. I almost said Russell Westbrook. I don't think he'll lead the league in passing yards this year. I'm going to take a one, Mr. Russell Wilson. I think now that he's not in Seattle anymore, Casey won't hate him as much, which will help. I think that will help him a lot when he's out there on the field. I also think he's going to be in an offense that protects him a little bit better. He's not going to be having to essentially scramble around, play extend, always just kind of make something out of nothing every single play. And I think that he is a good passer, right? He's not just a play extender. He's not just a creator. I think he is a good passer. And when he's able to sit in the pocket and pass a little bit better, he will rack up yards, right? And I think that's what he's good at, is racking up yards. When the pocket does break down, he has plenty of experience play extending, plenty of experience getting the ball, moving the sticks, getting the ball where it needs to be. I also think he has some better targets in Denver, right? And look, you could say, hey, DK Metcalf is a really good target. I think DK Metcalf is a really good target because Russ makes him a good target, right? I'm not downplay him. I think he's fine. I think he's an okay receiver. I don't think he is really that good without Russ. So yeah, I mean, that's my argument for Mr. Russell Wilson. And yeah, let's hear what you got, Casey. I know you probably won't tear it apart as much now as you would have back when he was with Seattle, but I'm aware that is an outside shot. Like, is it likely? I'm taking the long odds here, right? Like, I'm betting the long odds.
Okay, so honestly, I don't think Russ is gonna win. I don't think he's gonna have the most passing yards, but I do actually kind of like your pick here. Just for what it's worth, I drafted Russ last night in a fantasy draft. Got him in like the 8th round. He's a great value quarterback. If you're out there drafting fantasy at this point in the season, just go get Russ, I guess, because he's available late. And I do think there's tremendous upside. I think that one of the things we're factoring in here into these arguments and how we're going to grade each other a little bit is how good of an argument we make. So I kind of want to go like reverse Eminem strategy, right? Like Eminem would go up there, roast himself before the other like rap battler could do it. So I think actually, if I can make some points that you didn't make for us, I think I'm actually tearing down the argument you made in a way. You did mention the targets. But I think going a little bit more granular into that, Cortland Sutton has never had a great quarterback. I mean, maybe he had like 1 year crossover with to do with Peyton. I don't think so. So he's never had a great quarterback. Broncos have just had a carousel going on at quarterback with never a good one, never a top 30 quarterback in the league really landing there. Russ is going to change that. Russ didn't get acquired by Denver just to run the same kind of offense they ran in Seattle. They are not going to run first like they did forever in Seattle and rely on defense. They are going to air it out. You go out and acquire a Russ just so that you can create the thing that they created in Tampa Bay with Tom Brady. You acquire a top 5 in talent QB, and you build around him like Seattle was never willing to do. They're going to protect him a little bit better, but honestly, my main point for you is they're going to pass the ball. They have great running backs. That's going to be the main thing that stops Russ. Is you got Javonte Williams coming up on a breakout season most people are calling for. He's going to be a great running back. He's going to run the ball. Honestly, him breaking off like 70-yard runs might be the thing that takes away from Russ's passing yards the most. But he does have a good receiving back in Melvin Gordon as well. I think he's going to kind of take on that role a little bit. Honestly, I don't hate Russ. I think he might finish in the top 5 for passing yards. I might be willing to go that far. But again, you gotta beat the whole field. I like some of your arguments. He's just not going to do it, though. I don't think you can argue your way into that. I think Brady, even some other guys in there, like Allen, Burrow, I think is a sleeper here. I was kind of surprised nobody wanted to take Burrow here. They have great weapons, maybe better even than Russ. And I just don't think Russ can keep up. And it's first year, not year 2 of like this rebuild in Denver.
I already have my argument against you, but I want to knock both of you guys down at the same time. So come on, Q, what you got?
Okay, so first of all, it's just appalling to me that you could possibly even think that Russell Wilson could ever beat Matthew Stafford.
I already said I don't think Russ is gonna if it's Russ versus the field, if it's anyone versus the field, the likelihood I'll take the field, but we're not doing that. We're saying who can do it, you know?
I think personally Casey was just being a sweetheart with his counter argument because that was just absolutely ridiculous. Like, if I'm real, the Denver have no talent. They have no talent. That literally Russell Wilson is the best thing to happen to Denver in the last 2-3 years. Like, they've lost everything. All of their wide receivers suck. The only talent that they have is Javonte Williams, and that's going to take away from Russ's passing. Melvin Gordon III is like, okay, like he's cool, but like what is that going to do for Russell Wilson in passing yards?
He's going to pass the ball to him.
All right.
Here's going to pass the ball to them, but it's not.
Wait, quick question though, for real, Q. Do you really think that Seattle's wide receivers are better than Denver's wide receivers?
That's absolutely right. Thank you for making my counter argument for you. But Seattle's got no talent.
No, I mean, I don't even mind. Like, I think Cortland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy.
Maybe you think DK Metcalf is good, but Seattle has no talent. Like, that's what Russ is used to. Is that he has more talent in Denver than he had in Seattle. He made all the people who are talented who put up numbers in Seattle. I believe, and this is why my argument is this, I believe it's fully because of him, right? So it's like, okay, he was working with this level, and maybe, Cooper Kupp is at this level, but Russ was working at this level, and now he's working at this level. Like, that's going to be way more Russ. He's going to pass the ball more. He's going to be in the pocket. The biggest argument I would possibly make against Russ is the dude's really hasn't ever been a pocket passer. Mentally, that's different, right? So that's my biggest question mark is like, hey, you're gonna take a guy here who's moving teams. Number one, that's risky. You never know what's going to happen when somebody moves teams. I get it, right? I think it's going to be better. That's my argument. It's my opinion. The other argument here would be like mentally pocket passing and like being protected and going through your reads and progression is very different than play extending and kind of like breaking down the defense and just making something happen, right? Like the defense reacts to that differently. They make adjustments to it differently, right? I get it, right? Okay, but I do think Russ has that ice in his veins, right? Pocket passing is about ice in your veins. What's the difference between, from a tool perspective, Tom Brady and let's say Phillip Rivers? From a tool perspective, not much. Both of them can probably throw about the same amount of yardage. Like they can probably throw just as far. They can probably throw similarly accurately when they're just out there training, throwing at targets. But Tom Brady's got ice in his veins. He reads the game and he makes the big plays. Like big time players make big time shots, right? Big time players make big time plays, and Tom Brady does it, and Rivers doesn't. And I think that Russ is a guy who does it, right? That's my whole argument. Does Denver have talent? No, I don't think they need it. Seattle didn't have it either, and Denver will build around him. Seattle was never willing to build around him, and Denver will build around him.
To be fair, I also think what era of of Seattle are we talking about? Because as of late, yeah, there's no talent, but they were also trash too. So it's like I'm not too worried about that.
I mean,
Now, if
Russ
we're
still
talking
puts up
about
numbers.
like Seattle 5 years ago, then that's a completely different story. Like, of
All right,
course,
make the
they're
case for
far more-
Seattle 5 years ago. Who was so talented that they lost in the last 5 years, Q?
their
Marshawn
whole.
Lynch, the running back.
What do you mean? Like, no,
I mean, he had Tyler Lockett, who's been his longtime one. He never lost him. He lost a guy like Javon Curse maybe at some point during that run when Seattle was good. And yeah, the big piece you did lose is Marshawn Lynch, which honestly I would argue would lead to more passing yards for Russia. Probably did because they don't run the football as effectively generally. I'll say this: I think Seattle garbage like targets. I honestly think Russ did make that offense.
I'm surprised.
I've hated Seattle for a long time, but Russ was the best thing that ever happened to them. He is great. He's the best player on Denver for sure. I will say this, and this is the only argument I need to make. I do think it's an upgrade for him for weapons. I think Denver is better than Seattle was. But in this conversation, when you're going up against the take of I got Brady and his weapons, Q's got Stafford and his weapons, you have the third best weapons in the argument. I'll say that.
Yes, absolutely. There are better weapons out there, better quarterbacks with better weapons. My point on that is, look, if you're taking if any of us get to take the field, I want the field. Okay. Even if you get Tom Brady, I'll take the field, but that's not what we're doing here. Like we're trying to, he has the least good chance of beating the field. Sure. But like, I just, I think that he's got it. And even Tom Brady doesn't have a high chance of beating the field, statistically speaking. Moving on.
Well, okay. So, we got some good discussion in with AD early. These arguments, I think this is what we wanted out of this show. We wanted to make some good arguments, some good counter arguments. We wanted to let them breathe a little. We wanted to be able to kind of make sure we get all the meat off the bone. We're not leaving out too many things. Q went into the offensive coordinator even for his pick. I think that's great. I didn't know how. And we're kind of in that, like, we're floating in between that, like, we want casuals to be able to watch and also some people who pay a little bit more attention, trying to, like, kind of play on both sides of the line here. I'm gonna go ahead and toss it up that we leave this on a cliffhanger. I think we should. We're 45 minutes deep already. I say we go maybe another episode for RBs and wide receivers together, or maybe separately, depending on how it goes. I say we play it by ear because I like these a little bit more drawn out discussions.
I mean, look, quarterback is the biggest discussion.
Bro, and to be honest, I don't think Q can take another roasting from me. Honestly, I think Q needs to like recover from that dunking on that I gave him.
I mean,
wait, hold on, roasting.
So let's go through our score. Let's go through our
scoring. Am I hearing this okay? How could I possibly get roasted?
All right, here we go. Here's how we're gonna do this. We are gonna wrap this one on quarterbacks after this. Okay, so we're gonna go through our scoring here, and we'll start with Casey. And out of 10, Casey, considering the difficulty of your argument, considering how probably right you are, right? Like how right you are, and considering how good of an argument you made, I'm going to give you a 6.5 out of 10. I think you're very right. And that's where most of your points came from. Like you're probably the most likely to be right out of all of us. Twitter, obviously Twitter can't be wrong, regardless of what Q says. Yes, so, Twitter definitely thinks you're right. Tom Brady got by far the most votes in the Twitter poll. Tom Brady is, look, if you were to ask, 32 head coaches who's going to lead the league in passing yards this year, most of them will probably say Tom Brady. All right. So yeah, you get a lot of points on being right. I think it's tough for you to make all that creative of an argument other than I'm right. I have the GOAT. Okay. So not a lot of points there. Not a lot of points on difficulty of argument. So 6.5 from me. Q, what do you have Casey's score at?
I will say real quick, I'm the only one who mentioned 4 wideouts from the team that I picked.
Okay, and where your points came from, where your style points came from, was expertise. Yeah, from me.
Yeah, I mean, listen.
The bar is set, by the way. John hit me with that. I think we know how to grade now.
The bar is set, and
for the viewers who don't know, we've always
Casey, I'll give you this one. But to be fair, like Tom Brady is one of my favorite players of all time. So obviously, given the opportunity, I would have probably chosen him. But not to take away from your argument, so I'll give you a 7 out of 10 in your argument for sure. I think you had a solid basis, and I think it makes the most sense. But one thing I will not agree with is that Twitter is always correct. And
I'm on board with that.
also, I think next time, if we're gonna do it that way, we should have someone else like do like the vote, and then we don't look at whoever the winner is, and we kind of determine to see if it matches whatever's on Twitter instead of looking at what's on Twitter and then choosing.
I kind of like that. I think even better would be we do our takes, we post all of our takes with
Yes.
another, and we let the fans like who had the best take. Then that way that could be a little bit more like non-biased.
That's a good. Yeah, all right.
Then
We'll
it
play with
makes
some format. Hey, this is episode one of the Triple Cross podcast. So a 6.5 from me, a 7 from Q.
And I just got to say this for like the viewers, like I think a lot of people go like 7 is average, right? Because they hear like school trained us that 7 is like, oh, it's a C, it's average. We're all going off of like 5.5 is like average. Like you could literally get a 0, which is not going to happen unless
I think I would give you have an above average score of a 13.
Yeah, I'll take the 7. Actually, I don't hate the scoring. I don't love it, obviously. I think it deserves a few more points, but I think a 7 is going to be about as good as anybody's going to get here.
No, I think the 7 mostly comes from the fact that you chose Tom Brady, and Tom Brady
is most likely
just the GOAT.
And a peek behind the curtain for anybody watching. Yeah, I did.
And he has the most talent around him.
But like we offset the other positions in that way. Casey didn't take first choice in every position. You know, Q's got some Q's going to have some convincing arguments coming up, in my opinion, in the next episode.
I probably have the least convincing argument for the quarterback position, but he's also
old thing to say right before we. All right, let's do Q's scores.
Right, I feel like Russ is the least. All right,
all right. I'm going to go ahead.
Go ahead, and grade Casey.
All right, Q. You know, I think my scoring will I think we're all going to kind of develop kind of a flavor of scoring that we all kind of like probably stick to pretty well. I will say this. I loved you bringing up the actual OC change. Nobody else did that. So that's pretty big. But I will say, I don't think that's that big of a benefit because the offense just really isn't going to get that much better. Like the change there, it's not going to get that better. You could argue that's going to make it worse after a season like they had last year. So I like that you did it. So for style points, for strength of argument, I like that you went there. I don't know that I agree with it, but I'll still give you a little benefit for that, for going there. How right you are is my main concern here. I think Stafford, out of the 3 choices that we're representing, I think Stafford would be my third to actually get passing. I am a Russ believer. That's why I didn't go into John as hard as I went into you. That can be controversial.
So that means then you'd give him points on difficulty of argument then.
Yeah, and I think that's probably for me. I'm kind of going off what you guys did here, but I'm gonna probably go with like a 6 here for you, Q. Like it was solid. I think how right you are is the main thing I hold against you. I did like your argument though. Good points for that.
I give your difficulty of argument high. I think I personally think that it's probably more likely that Stafford will lead than Russ in reality, right? But
this is another crazy thing to say right before
you picked before me, right? Like I didn't get to pick Stafford, but like
I hear these guys, they don't even believe in their pick.
I specifically picked Russ because I was like, let me try. I want to try and make a difficult argument. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think that I'm gonna go. I give you solid points on difficulty of argument. I give you some points on likelihood of being right. I think, essentially your stance, and I actually like this stance. Like if you're going to pick Matt Stafford, then the stance is, I think that we're seeing the beginning of a super duo, right? Like in Matt Stafford and Cooper Kupp. So I think it's a good stance. It's like a good creative stance to take that. Like maybe if you walked up to a bunch of people on the street, Matt Stafford got a lot of votes. If you had to ask people, why do you think it's Matt Stafford? They'd be like, he won the Super Bowl, right? Like that wasn't your argument. You didn't go there. You actually like made a better argument than that. So I give you some points there. I dock some points on your argument because I would have liked to see better counter arguments against us kind of saying like, well, more defenses are going to be ready for him. I mean, look at that is an established pattern. Look at Lamar Jackson, right? Like it's an established pattern. Defenses are more ready for you. You can catch the league off guard for 1 year, right? So overall, I am right in the average zone here. I have you at 5.5.
Okay. And one thing I just have to say, like, out of all of these quarterbacks, Tom Brady, Russell Wilson, Matthew Stafford. I'm going to repeat this again just so you guys remember this. Matthew Stafford's number 3 last year. And first of all, he's also the most efficient by far out of all 3 quarterbacks. Just saying. And it's his first year.
We're not arguing who's going to be the most efficient.
I know. I'm just saying. Like, he's the most efficient. So that alone just says, like, hey,
who's the best quarterback this year? Who's the best quarterback this year? That's a different argument. We're talking about raw yards.
No, I'm not saying he's the best quarterback because of his efficiency. I'm just saying, like, he is the most efficient last year. Therefore, this year, like, who's to say he just doesn't go for 5K again? Like,
okay, yeah.
But
I mean, look,
that's what I'm saying.
All right.
Brady.
Got me?
All right, John.
Casey, I want to hear from you second because I don't know what you're going to grade me, but you basically made my argument for me. Q, I think, is going to be most harsh on me. You go.
Okay. So John, I think you had many options. I think you had plenty of options, and you chose to go with Russell Wilson. So I'm gonna be honest with you. That might be the worst take I've ever heard. Russell Wilson's not coming in top 5.
I didn't. So with my argument didn't like make you think like, oh yeah, I was here on Russell Wilson, but like at least I mean John made some good points. At least I'm kind of like here now. You're like, nah, I'm like still here. Like
I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but none of the talent he has around him is even remotely close to what Matthew Stafford came into. Like, let's say Russell Wilson goes into the Broncos and they just happen to have this crazy season where like they go to the Super Bowl. I don't even think that could ever happen because there's no talent. Like, they don't even have an OBJ or a Cooper Kupp. At least Cooper Kupp before was showing signs of being like potentially becoming a really great quarterback before it happened. Whereas like anyone on Denver is not even showing signs of being like a good wide receiver.
Cooper Kupp was going to be a good quarterback before Stafford.
Sorry, I meant wide receiver.
Wait, did you give a?
He would have been better than Jared Goff, probably. I mean, I'll give him that.
Did you give a grade, Q?
No, I didn't. I was gonna give John. I think I would give John. Difficulty is what's carrying you because that is probably the most difficult argument to make. So I'd probably give you a 5.5.
Okay. I mean, I expected lower. I expected lower from Q, so I like that.
We're all being kind of nice. I think, again, if people are thinking like 7 is average, it sounds like we're all mean. But considering we're like 5.5 is average, I think we're all being pretty.
I mean, I figured like Q would be like, if I give him like 3-4 points for difficulty of argument, like I thought that was all I'd get, like zeros in any other, like a good argument, didn't make any good points.
All right.
I think what made me choose the 5.5 was for sure your difficulty. Like, you trying to make that argument is insane to me. But also like you saying like how Russ makes, I guess, just his talent alone kind of like, brings up the talent of everyone else on his team. I think that's a fair argument because we've seen that in Seattle. And I'll agree with you. Like, Seattle hasn't had the best wide receivers, even when they did win the Super Bowl. But I think they were better overall than, Denver. That's just my opinion. But yeah, so I feel like 5.5 is fair.
All right. What you got for me, Casey?
All right. So we got a little echo. Somebody's got a little echo going, by the way, here. Just because I know that can drive people crazy. I think that must have been it. All right. So, John, I disagree with Q. Honestly, Q, you and I have not agreed a lot on this episode. And I don't think that's always going to happen, but
that's fine.
For whatever reason, this episode, because I feel the opposite way. John, I think actually giving you some credit for your pick. It's out of the box. Most people wouldn't have picked it. You went on a limb, sure, but I actually believe in it to some degree. I think he's a little bit of a sleeper in this kind of discussion. So I don't want to give you as many points for like difficulty of argument, even though that's against like the meta, against the chalk, the standard. Most people would say that. I'm not I'm a longtime Russ hater, and I'm kind of a believer this year that he's gonna kind of go into Denver and let's ride all over the place, right? Like Broncos country. He's gonna be big. They're gonna pass a lot. They're gonna do well. I disagree with Q2 that they have no talent on that team. I think they're incredibly talented receivers. You just don't know about it because they've had Drew Lock at quarterback. I mean, he makes everybody look bad. So, John, I give you I don't dock you points. I don't give you too many extra points for difficulty of argument. I guess where I would say you could have improved the argument is maybe a little bit more granular into the weapons, because I think they're underrated, because obviously like somebody like Q comes in and they go like, there's nobody any good. I think that's not true. I drafted Russell Wilson in fantasy last night, and I also took who I think will be his number one receiver in Cortland Sutton. Got that stack working for me. I'm a believer in that weapon. And I think that Jerry Jeudy, this is his year that I think he'll break out a little bit. Finally, a good quarterback. He's had some reps in the league now at this point. So, John, I said all that to say, I think I'm going to give you about a 6. That feels right to me. I think you did an all right job. I would say, yeah, sell me on those weapons a little bit harder, because that was for sure the thing you had to overcome in my mind compared to the other two options, because we're all speculating on how much the Broncos will pass and how efficient Russ will be. I will say this too. If you want to make the efficiency argument, Q, Russ is one of the most efficient quarterbacks of all time over the course of his whole career. So again, it's just, they've been on a run first team. He's been on a run first team, for his whole career. I don't think they're going to do that. I think his efficiency takes a hit for sure, because they're going to increase the volume, but the volume increase should help with this kind of talk and who's going to get the most passing yards total. Yeah. So John, you got a 6. I honestly, I gave you guys both a 6 because I thought it was pretty even across the board. If I really had to pick between you two, I don't know who I give the argument to. I think Q made like I said, I like the OC talk. He got a little bit more into it, maybe, but I believe in John's pick a little bit more, honestly. So that's it.
All right. So covering the scores so far, Casey is leading after quarterbacks, so he kind of wins the day, so to speak, because we're going to move on. We're going to do running backs and receivers on another day. So Casey is leading the day at 13.5 points, but the game is not over. Q has 11.5 points, and I also have 11.5 points, so we are both tied in the second position. Things will separate out more as we go, though. Giving the nod to Twitter, let's see who else people thought would lead the various NFC and the AFC, the various divisions. Number one was Jared. Number one was Allen. Keep thinking basketball.
Josh. Jared Allen was a defensive back for the Vikings. So probably where
basketball player
or defensive lineman. Not did I say defensive back? Oh my god.
Yeah. So Josh Allen leading the NFC in passing yards. It's a good take. I mean, he would have to get traded.
That's spicy. That's
it's a spicy take, right? And she was like, "Oh, I know. I voted for him in the AFC poll, and then I said he's so good, he's going to win the NFC." She leaned in. I called her out. She leaned in.
We see you.
Yep. Yeah. By far, the biggest comments, the biggest hero in the comments in the NFC was Jameis Winston. I mean, Jameis Winston here. There was another whole thread about Jameis Winston. I can't find it off the top. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think about this?
Well, I think that people should get more involved in our Twitter discussions from here on out. Definitely go follow us on Twitter at Triple Cross Pod, so you can weigh in with your opinions, because I think we need to kind of carve out a good community for ourselves. Make sure we're getting quality answers here. But that said, obviously Josh Allen's great. I think we'll talk about him a little bit more when we switch over to the other poll, maybe. Here, because there's some guys in the AFC that I think could be in discussion for this for sure. In the NFC, though, the reason why people are talking about Jameis Winston and Dak Prescott is because other than Brady, I don't really think there's a guy in the NFC who's going to do it, and that includes Stafford. Yep. I think most of the if you were to say honestly, if you were to tell me hey, is the passing leader going to come from the AFC or NFC? Even though I picked Brady and I believe he's the guy, I might take the AFC just because
they have more chance.
5 to 10 options that it could actually be. Right. Where in the NFC, I think there's 1, maybe 2. Because Dakota, I just reading that. Dak Prescott. I don't. Is that his real name? Dakota? Maybe.
I don't know. And this also made me wonder. Is he a middle namer? Is he a middle? He has both used his middle name and shortened it. If this guy's got it right.
I'm a longtime Seahawks and Cowboys hater, so If I have a hole in my game, I mean, I usually know the Seahawks pretty well because we play them so often, being the Niners. But the Cowboys, they're so overcovered anyway in the national media just because they're America's team. Man, I try to avoid all the Cowboys content I can. But I will say, Dak Prescott, he's a fine quarterback. He'll do well. He's not going to lead. He just lost his friggin' Amari Cooper, his number one receiver. CeeDee Lamb will be good, but he's not going to lead them to the most this year. Sorry, bad take there. Jameis Winston, honestly, some really good weapons on that team too. But it's Jameis Winston. This is no longer the Tampa Bay offense where it was just, hey, throw the ball 40 yards down the field every single throw. They're not going to let him do that. They need to be more efficient. Maybe some shorter passes. I will say Alvin Kamara may be the best pass catching back in the league. That guy's crazy. So I get the Winston. He'd be above Prescott in my mind, but there's a reason these guys are just in the conference.
What do you think here? Like, why is there so much Jameis Winston love? I feel I have a theory on this, but what do you think?
The reason why there's so much Jameis Winston talk is because of 2019 New Orleans, when he took the passing title with I think over 5,000 yards that season.
It's like 5,100.
Yeah, so I think that, and on top of that, he was one of the most efficient quarterbacks that season as well. So I think besides Patrick Mahomes, he was like per attempt, he had the most yards besides Patrick Mahomes that season. But yeah, I think that's why
the weird way to put it, bro.
He
led the league in interceptions that year. Efficient for this argument, sure though. I
mean not in terms of like interception. I'm just talking about yards per
passing
attempt.
yards. That's fair. That's fair. But it is a totally different team, totally different scheme. And I know people might say like, yeah, but the Saints are good too. Yeah, but they lost their head coach and Sean Payton, who was like an offensive mastermind. He's not there. So like,
I don't think they'll.
I'm not a believer.
I mean, honestly, I don't think he'll be on. I think he'll. I think he'll actually be in more situations where like they're running the clock out. You know what I mean? And anyone who's in many situations like that probably not going to take the passing crown. And that's actually my biggest knock on Rodgers, and probably why he's always been. I mean, there's been years where he has been carrying that team, but it's just not his. He's not a high volume yardage guy. My boy at Honest Thought with Russ Wilson here. Daniel Jones, that's a completely serious pick for sure. Yeah. He is in the talk.
He might be. Is that a Knicks jersey? That guy just might be a hardcore New York fan, but based on the meme, it seems jokey. I mean, it better be, honestly. Daniel Jones might be better at cornhole than he is at football.
Yeah. Carson Wentz, another very serious pick. Kirk Cousins, this is probably the only other one that we haven't discussed that would be like a semi-serious pick at all. My take on Kirk Cousins as a Vikings fan is like, I like him. He's all right. I'm not like excited about him. And in fact, I think if Cousins was on a team like the Broncos, say like he wouldn't be very good. You know what I mean? Or if he was on a team like, I don't know, the Broncos, Chargers, if he was on the Jets, nobody's good on the Jets, but like, I think he's like, okay. And he's better than okay. He's a good quarterback who knows how to use weapons well. And he has weapons. So if Cousins were to win the passing yards title, it would be because that would be the argument for him, is that he has a lot of weapons, in my opinion.
Honestly, the situation I'd comp it to is Wilson. I actually do think both teams have good targets. No, there is nobody on Denver who is Justin Jefferson, just to be clear. Justin Jefferson, though, might be the most talented receiver in football. He's right up there. And yeah, Kirk, I would say, has an outside chance at something like this, especially because, kind of to Q's point, like when a new OC comes in and they've kind of come out publicly and say they want to pass the ball more, which is fine. I think that actually helps preserve Dalvin Cook a little bit. It's not like he doesn't get involved in the passing game as well, which is another thing that helps Kirk get a lot of passing yards. Those little dump offs after a play breaks down and then Dalvin Cook houses it from friggin' 50 yards out. Like he can do that. So I actually don't hate the Kirk thing. I'm not, they're an NFC team. It's easy to hate on them because I root against all NFC teams when my Niners are playing them. But I don't really hate the Kirk here. Captain Kirk, let's go.
What you think, Q?
Not a fan. If I'm straight up.
You think it's a better pick than Russ, though, probably. No, you got Kirk right in there with Russ.
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay, all right.
I call him pretty equal take.
I think it comes back to talent, though. Like, yeah, I think Kirk Cousins has better talent than Russ does, but Russ is the better quarterback.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So, yeah,
Q's got Russ. From what you like the way you graded me, or the way I feel like you have Russ right in there with like Zach Wilson to win the passing yards title. Yeah, Goff, another very serious pick, I think. But yeah, more famous Jameis. All right, moving on to the AFC. I mean, like people were like, here's my take on Jameis is that I've noticed this with any Heisman winner who's okay, even right, like Cam Newton, Reggie Bush, like people just like become super fans of him, and then I feel like with Jameis especially because he's not usually in the talk when people talk about elite quarterbacks. But he's okay. He's like bubble elite, I think, in my opinion. But people who like are big Jameis fans, like they're like, oh, you're talking about Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady and other elite quarterbacks. Like you didn't mention Jameis Winston though. It's like when I broke down the conversation with these people, most of them were like, well, no, I don't think he'll lead in passing yards. Like, but that was the question. Like,
Yeah.
why did you say him?
No, and we saw a snapshot, honestly, of I don't know how many games Jameis played last year, but he was on the Saints, and we saw him being used differently. They did not do high volume passing. They focused on efficiency. He actually had, I'm fairly certain last year was his best touchdown to interception ratio of his career, but all those numbers were down, and passing yards and everything. Like he just, they have Alvin Kamara for one, which on the Bucks, like, can you even name like a nice RB1 that they had on the Bucks at Winston's time there? No, nobody can. They had like friggin' muscle hamster Doug Martin for a minute there. Like that's about it.
Muscle hamster?
That was his name, bro. I didn't come up with it, but I
didn't make up the name.
I mean, I put the muscle hamster in here for sure. But no, I mean, Winston's not going to be the high volume guy, but I do think he's gonna increase in efficiency, continue to do that. Hopefully, at least because missing Sean Payton's the biggest detriment to him. They have great weapons. Michael Thomas could return to form, be a top 5 receiver. Chris Olave, great sleeper in fantasy. If you guys need a pick out there, I mean, he's a promising rookie receiver at a good cost in fantasy football. He'll contribute for sure. Who else they got there? Oh, Jarvis Landry, pretty consistent guy, another underrated guy. He's gonna get his. He's never gonna, he hardly ever breaks out and has some incredible 200-yard game, but he's gonna get his 60, 70 yards damn near every game. So I don't hate Jameis in this discussion, but I would bet on anyone else before him, probably out of the most. Never mind. He's in like the second half.
We bet in the top, like of the top 5 to 6 NFC quarterbacks. I mean, would you even put him in the top?
I wouldn't call him bubble elite for sure.
Really?
I think that no, I don't think he's there. I mean,
I'd call him.
If he was bubble elite, he wouldn't be on his
because I think he's
team,
capable. Like I do think he is capable, but yeah,
if he was bubble elite, he wouldn't be on his second team. Quarterbacks who are good, they stay where they were drafted.
Yeah, I got you.
Honestly,
unless you're Tom Brady.
All right. I get you, but I don't know.
I would really like to bring up a runner-up in this, for me at least.
Yeah, there's a lot.
And I, by all means, am not a Chargers fan whatsoever. But I think if I'm being real, Justin Herbert's probably gonna be
the only one who is brought up on the AFC.
Realistically, he might, take over this season. I think he has the potential because he's always been in that like top, at least 1 through 8 or maybe top 10, maybe. And even last season he was number 2. So I think potentially this could be a breakout season for him.
I don't know how to call it a breakout. I think he's arrived, man.
I mean, he's already arrived, but I guess when I say breakout, I just mean this could be the season where he gets number 1, essentially.
Yeah, man. I know Q. You mentioned it before we like kind of landed on our picks for this episode. That you were kind of waffling. It seemed like between Stafford and Herbert. And to be honest with you, man, I think you picked the wrong LA QB. Sounds like you might have some LA bias going on, maybe too. You only got 2 LA quarterbacks in mind, but besides that, I actually think
they are in the top 3 last year. Casey is
man, but hey, that you got to be kind of right in your thing.
Outlandish claims that I'm making. We also did win the Super Bowl. I mean, that's not even an argument.
Stafford still didn't get up there. That's
not
what
even
I mean. Just regression's coming. That's it. But I think Herbert does have an outside shot. Not even outside shot. Herbert's got a legit chance here. The problem with the AFC, and don't add us on Twitter and be like, why isn't Herbert an option here? Why do we have to even comment him? I get it. It's kind of a disgrace, but like Twitter only lets us put 4 options up. And you tell
Yeah.
me which 4 to put up in the friggin' or which 3 with an other to put up in the AFC.
Yeah, we want an other option.
Yeah. So like, honestly, the only guy I'm without going into more of the others, Herbert's great. Burrow, I don't think we talked about him enough. Honestly, bang for their buck, he might have the best weapons in the NFL. Jamar Chase, he's got T. Higgins. He's got Tyler Boyd out of the slot as his third receiving option. He's got Joe Mixon, a pretty solid receiving back as well. They are a pretty complete offense, I would say. It's a good running game with Mixon. Their O-line should be improved this year. They really made an effort to improve that. I think they have 3 new starters in the O-line, which usually would be a bad thing. But considering how bad they were last year, I think it's definitely a good thing because they were priority free agents. I think it might have been trade targets. I don't remember all of it. Let's be honest. I don't have all 5 O-line starters memorized for the friggin' Cincinnati Bengals, but they should be improved. Joe Burrow, another year removed from a pretty tough injury too. Burrow honestly would have been probably my second choice for guys to pick in this episode, even though, man, I love Josh Allen. Josh Allen is my favorite quarterback to watch, my favorite guy to own in fantasy. But just volume of passing yards, I would probably go Brady. Burrow would be my second choice at anybody. And what do you say about Pat Mahomes? Like, he'll be fine.
This is what I was going to say, is that I'm surprised on the coolness of Pat Mahomes. For me, just like the eye test, like watching football, he is the most impressive quarterback to me. Like the stuff he can do, like the way he can run, the way he can throw like different passes. Like, dude could probably throw a 12-yard shuffle pass right on the money. Like no one else in football is throwing like no look passes, right? Like that just the stuff Mahomes can do, I feel like is super impressive. Maybe because the season wasn't as good last year, maybe because he lost Tyreek Hill, but I was shocked by the outcome of this. Like I thought Mahomes would win this poll, and Josh Allen ran away with this poll. I mean, nothing against Josh Allen. I was actually going to choose Josh Allen. And then I decided to go with Russ because I thought like, no, I would rather make like a more creative argument here. But like Josh Allen, I love his progression. Dude's gotten like way better every year he's been playing. But I'm kind of surprised that Mahomes and Burrow are like, basically Mahomes is behind Burrow here. Why do you guys think that is? I guess.
Yeah, I mean, the real reason is Tyreek Hill is gone. And not just Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill is great. He's a deep threat receiver for sure, but not really. He's actually a very complete receiver. Most of his yardage actually came from like short passes because he's an insane yak guy too. So yeah, it's because Tyreek Hill is gone and some other lesser weapons that people wouldn't consider. Like, yes, Kelsey is there, but they lost like Demarcus Robinson. They lost, I think, Sammy Watkins. Yeah, Sammy Watkins is gone now. I don't know how much he really helped out last year. I think they lost even another receiver. You got guys like Mecole Hardman. Sky Moore is a rookie. I think it'll take a year or two to kind of really click in there. That'd be my guess. Travis Kelce's there. It feels weird to say that the weak spot in the argument for Mahomes are his weapons because he's been tied to Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill his whole career. And though you would say Tyreek Hill has the best weapons out of every quarterback up until maybe this year, and I think he's going to do just fine. He's going to be great. But considering he didn't even do it last year with Hill, I find it hard for him to be the passing yards leader this year.
Yeah.
Also, on top of that, I think, in order for Joe Burrow to really be in this conversation, he's going to need more volume for sure. I think he's just not getting off enough throws compared to the other quarterbacks. And obviously, like we said, he's clearly the most efficient in the league last season. But he just didn't get off enough throws to even have that volume in terms of like yardage to be in the top, 5, I guess. But also another thing is like Joe Mixon. Like Joe Mixon's.
Yeah, I was not even going to go to any of the ones who weren't mentioned, but yeah.
Yeah, top 3 running backs in the league last season. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with you, Q. I think like as weird as this, geography plays a factor in these things too, because of the divisions they're in. One, because divisions kind of develop an identity of their own, and a lot of the teams kind of become similar, really, because they just need to be able to compete. And one of the things about any of these guys in the AFC West that's huge, that's Patrick Mahomes, that's Russell Wilson, that's Derek Carr on the Raiders, and Justin Herbert on the Chargers. One of the good things for all of those quarterbacks is they're in a very competitive division where there's going to be a lot of points put up on the board. You will need to keep passing for for the majority of those games within the division. So that is a huge boost to all those guys in the argument. And something against Joe Burrow, ultimately the big reason why I didn't choose to take, I went with Brady instead, is because exactly what you said, Q. They're in kind of that high T offense where they do want to run the ball a little bit more with Joe Mixon. Similar to like the Steelers, they don't have a great quarterback. That remains to be seen at least. They want to run the ball a little bit more with Najee, like that kind of area. Like geography plays into this. Like those guys, they run the ball a little bit more. So
I actually do think that a lot of these guys who've been mentioned, all the mentions of the AFC. So just looking at Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Herbert, I actually think like probably all four of them have a decent outside. Like Brady's the leader, but none of them are a bad argument in terms of like who might lead. Like they're all like, oh yeah, if any of them ended up with a passing yards crown, I don't think any of us would be surprised.
Yeah. And one thing I'd like to point out too, for this argument overall, if we're talking specifically about passing yards and not like winning in general, we're talking about passing yards specifically for this conversation, like talent around these quarterbacks is 100% the biggest factor, because they obviously don't get these passing yards without their talent around them. So you can't just be like, oh, Russell Wilson's a great quarterback, and then not take into consideration the talent that he has around them. Granted, like obviously we don't know how Russell Wilson and these wide receivers will like play together in their chemistry, because we haven't seen it. Obviously it's a new team, but like looking at them as players, like it just doesn't compare to the other talent that the other, quarterbacks have around them. That's just the way I see it.
No, I agree with you there, Q. And one of the, I mentioned his name just super briefly, but somebody could have made a pretty interesting case for Derek Carr because he's in that division. They are probably going to be down. They're not a bad team, I don't think, but they might be the worst team in that division. I don't think that's controversial to say. They'll be behind. They need to keep throwing the ball. He just acquired Devontae Adams. They have a history from college. He's already got Renfro to go along with that, as well as Darren Waller. Some great pass catching options there. I don't think they're as high on running the ball this year. Did you see like Josh Jacobs got some run in like preseason, like in like the Hall of Fame game? Kind of like this new coaching staff is not in on Jacobs really. They drafted a rookie and Zamir White, I think, in like third round or something. Like didn't put a ton of stock into it, but they're not sold on Jacobs. They didn't go out and get like some alpha running back either. I don't think they're looking to run the ball as much in this AFC West division. They want to throw. He's got the weapons to do it now. Derek Carr could be a sneaky. I think he probably he could sneak into the top 5. I think he was right there anyway last year.
Yeah.
Devontae Adams might put it over the top. That's probably if I had to make a creative choice, I might have gone Derek Carr, even though I'm not necessarily
Derek, actually you have a really good point there. Derek 5 passing yards last season is number 5. So he he could definitely go crazy this year. I think that was like probably one of the unsuspected top quarterback picks.
Not a single person on Twitter brought him. Yeah.
That difficulty of argument for like a Derek Carr, I don't think it's probably the most difficult, but it does make sense for me, like for him to be the top, because like, dude, he had 4,800. There's like 3 quarterbacks in the top 5, and he didn't even have Devontae Adams last season.
Bro, last year he lost Henry Ruggs middle of the season. They switched head coaches middle of the season. John Gruden with that whole scandal. Like that's in the middle of all that stuff. I mean, I think at least between me and Q here, I think we're landing on like, hey, the guy who isn't getting enough love for this kind of argument is probably Derek Carr.
Dude, Derek Carr is
I'm not living and dying by the Derek Carr.
Derek Carr last season is 80 yards from being number 3 in the passing list for 2021. So that alone is like insane to me. Like he potentially could be number 1. Like actually,
Raiders Nation, where are you at on these polls?
No Derek Carr support.
Las Vegas just isn't there yet. They're like, they keep forgetting. Oh yeah, we have an NFL team now. I forgot. Yeah. Like
there's some evidence now.
And clearly, I don't know if you guys heard about this too, but I think 2 weeks ago or maybe last week, Dana White. I don't know if you guys.
I was just gonna bring this up. Yeah, on Gronk's
Brady.
Dana White.
Go ahead. Q brought it up.
Yeah. Dana White is actually trying to facilitate like a deal between the Patriots and the Raiders, where it would be a package deal with Tom Brady and Gronk. to come to the Raiders for like Derek Carr and someone else, I think.
Well, Gronk was a free agent, so he
I thought it was
gonna follow Brady no matter what. He didn't have to be included in the deal.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
Anyways, the Raiders wanted to keep Derek Carr. It was gonna go through, and then last second it like fell through because they wanted to stick with Derek Carr. So
yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Q.
No, go for it. I mean, I was just saying that just says a lot about like Derek Carr as a player.
It does. That what the only downside of that argument was. It was John Gruden who was the one who put his feet in the ground on that and said, no, we're sticking with Carr. And now he's gone. And I think everybody looks at Gruden sideways, but he has a good football mind still. Like nobody hates on Gruden as a football coach. They hit on him for other reasons for sure.
Yeah.
We don't need to get into that, but I will say the reason I wanted to bring that story up is because this probably, I think most people have landed now, is finally gives us clarity to that infamous Brady quote of, you're going to stick with that motherfucker? Like people they thought maybe it was Jimmy G in San Francisco because they were connected to Brady. They thought it was Tannehill maybe because like Tannehill's good, not great. Maybe Titans wanted Brady. They were interested. A lot of people thought those were like, in my opinion, those were the two people were thinking it was. Now, I think most people think it's probably Derek Carr is that motherfucker. So if I were Derek Carr, I would like own that nickname and be like, yeah, I am that motherfucker. Like that's my, and I think he might be this year.
So
hot take. 2022 motherfucker might be Derek Carr.
Yeah.
Yep.
Just gonna leave it like that.
Dude, I think Raiders have a good chance at the Super Bowl. I'm not even gonna lie. I'm not even gonna lie to you.
That's for another. We'll do that. We're gonna do Super Bowl odds on another episode, but I would love for you to pick the Raiders as your pick.
No. I'm never gonna do that. But I said they have a good chance. They got a better chance of the Broncos. And
I will argue with you all day about that.
What?
I disagree, sir.
What do you mean?
Disagree. Broncos country, let's ride.
Nah, we're not riding nowhere. Like literally, the Raiders have a far better chance than the Broncos.
Yeah, they don't even have a cool catchphrase, dude.
Terrible.
What are they even gonna say when they score touchdowns? We're Raiders. I don't know.
Exactly. What are they gonna say?
All right. I mean, the hot take is Derek Carr for sure. I feel like we could have done the whole episode and then just said like, hey guys, don't sleep on Derek Carr. And then we would have gotten out of here in like 10 minutes. But that's not the point of the podcast. You're here to hear the argument of who is going to be the passing leader in 2022. This is a TBC to be continued. We will also on the next episode discuss who will lead rushing yards in 2022, as well as who will lead receiving yards in 2022. Could it be the same person? What? No.
Oh man, John's trying to foreshadow here.
Teasing the episode. All right. Thanks for watching. If you're watching this deep into the video, I'm sure you have an opinion on all this. Hopefully, drop it in the comments. Say who you thought won, right? Like we kind of came up with Casey. But who do you think actually won the debate, right? Like not who you think is right. Obviously, Casey's probably most likely to be right. But who do you think actually won the debate? Say who you think is most likely to lead the 2022-2023 season in passing yards, and smash that like button, drop those comments, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and until the next episode, we will see you.
Later, guys.